Okay, good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to welcome you to the Candidates Forum this evening. Tonight's forum is solely sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Brooklyn Park, Osseo, and Maple Grove, due to the announcement of the Twin West Political Action Committee's intent to endorse a candidate or candidates in this race. Twin West Chamber of Commerce has rescinded its sponsorship to remove any conflict of interest and keep this a nonpartisan candidate forum. The League of Women Voters is an organization that is nonpartisan and volunteer-based. It is organized at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While the League members do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The League of Women Voters does encourage its members as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. However, the views expressed in this forum are those of the individual candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. By sponsoring this forum this evening, the League provides an opportunity for citizen participation and exposure to candidates, but does not provide an endorsement of any candidate or candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate this evening. Tonight's forum will be for Senate District 34 and State Representative Districts 34A and 34B. In tonight's forum, the candidates will start with 6 of the 7 questions they received in advance, in which they have 1 minute to respond. Then our candidates will have up to 30 seconds to respond to each of the questions that are coming in and have come in via email. Finally, they will be given 1 minute for the final question that is their final statements. Candidates, the League would like to request that you refrain from making any personal attacks on your fellow candidates. Due to the pandemic, to keep everyone safe, we have no in-person audience for this forum or any others we are holding. We have been posting email addresses to which questions may be sent. During this live broadcast, your questions may be sent to candidateforums@twinwest.com. Our screeners are here making sure the questions are relevant to all candidates in this forum and are not in any way a personal attack towards any of our candidates. I'd like to take this moment to point out our timekeeper for this evening, Carol Ware. She will be showing you when you have 15 seconds to finish your statements and then show you that your time has expired. Please finish your sentence at that time, as I will be directing the next speaker's turn. The order for tonight, the questions will be selected randomly, and I'd like to introduce everybody who the candidates are seated in alphabetical order tonight. I don't know if the audience can see that or not, but we have Kristen Bonner with SD 34. We have Warren Limmer in the Senate District 34, Brian Raines in 34A, Kristen Robbins in 34A, Dory Trosson in 34B, and Bonnie Westland in Senate District 34. And now we will get started with the very first question. Please tell us about your background and previous civic involvement that support your candidacy for this position, and we'll start with Kristen Bonner.
Thank you, Linda. I'm State Representative Kristen Bonner. Very few people can live their passion. Serving the community is mine, and I feel so blessed to do this work. I'm a small business owner and IT consultant for over 20 years, appointed to the Governor's Blue Ribbon Council on IT. In plain language, I'm a team leader with experience removing barriers, reaching across the aisle, and getting things done. I've spent my entire life in the healthcare industry, the daughter of a nurse with a pharmacist next door. From medical records to preventing hospital readmission, I'm uniquely qualified to understand healthcare from the inside out and create systems that work for real families. I spent my childhood volunteering with my parents to build strong, resilient communities. But the best part of my job as a legislator is interacting with families in my own community to work on issues that matter most to me, or to them.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Limmer.
I see the light now. I'm Warren Limmer. I'm the present state senator here in District 34. As a brief background, I'm a father, I'm a husband. We have 3 kids in Maple Grove, and they're all moving past the college age now, and we're finally empty nesters. In my private business, I'm a real estate agent, and I invest in real estate. I've been a former correction officer, as well as, in my younger days, a member of the City of Crystal Human Rights Commission. I've been a member of the Hennepin County Corrections Advisory Board, and also a state rep, and I am now the current state senator here in Maple Grove, Rogers, Osseo, and Dayton.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Raines.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the Chamber and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for everyone watching. My name is Brian Raines. I'm a 13-year resident of the district and a lifelong Minnesotan. I'm a father of 2 great boys in Rogers Public Schools and a very proud Navy vet. I've worked for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters for the last decade, working to negotiate agreements that ensure our Minnesota businesses succeed and working families can build the kind of life that they dream of. That's the main reason why I decided to run. So many families in Minnesota are struggling, some of them barely just getting by, and that isn't good enough. I want to make sure that all Minnesotans have the opportunity not to just get by, but to thrive. I look forward to having a great discussion tonight about how to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Robbins.
Thank you. I'm Representative Kristen Robbins, and I appreciate everyone being here tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'm originally from Crookston, Minnesota, and I've lived in the northwest suburbs for more than 20 years. I've been married 27 years to my wonderful husband, Brent, and we have 3 daughters, and I'm a very proud mom. I was first elected in 2018 and have a strong background in public service. In the 1990s, I was the legislative director for a member of Congress, where I've worked on a number of issues, and I also led the bipartisan Porkbusters Coalition. I have volunteered for many years in our community. I've taught junior achievement, been a destination imagination coach, volunteered on the State Chronic Homelessness Commission, and I also spearheaded an effort, this was actually for pay, to give families a tax credit and deduction for education experiences during the Governor Carlson administration. Just want to give a plug for that. If you have extra expenses for distance learning right now, you can still take that credit and deduction. So I have a master's degree in economics and a bachelor's from Bethel University, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trausen.
I also want to thank the League of Women's Voters for having this forum. It's always good to give the people of the community an idea of what their candidates are like. My name is Dory Truss, and I'm running for state representative in District 34B. I am a lifelong resident in our district. I am new to politics, but wanted to make sure that our children have a bright future. My goal in my run is to listen, support, and empower the people of our community to bring their voices forward, because it's in those voices that we're going to find the solutions to the problems that we're facing. With that said, I'm looking forward to tonight's forum and getting to know people.
Thank you. And Ms. Westland?
Thank you so much, and thank you also to the League for providing this forum and an opportunity for the community to hear from us. My name is Bonnie Westland. I'm running for state senate, and I am asking for your vote. I've worked hard all of my life, overcoming obstacles along the way, to become a successful small business owner of a family law practice. As a single mom, I put myself through college and law school in order to create a better life for myself and for my kids. In my work as an attorney and mediator, I spend my days helping people find common ground to resolve their disputes, a skill that we so desperately need at the legislature. I've served on the board of trustees at my synagogue for over 5 years, and I've worked as a community activist for over 40 years. I have worked hard to create a better life for my family, and when I'm elected, I'll work just as hard for yours. I'm Bonnie Westland, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. For the first question, we'll start with Mr. Limmer. What are your top 2 priorities for the legislature should you be elected?
During this time, I believe that the 2 top priorities is number 1, public safety. Public safety is vitally important. It's basically the main function of government. It's the number 1 role that we expect from government. And with rising crime in Minneapolis, threatening our suburbs, this is not the time to defund or dismantle police, but rather reinforce our law enforcement with proper training, resources, and approved protocols. In addition, we do recognize the tension that is in our urban core, and we must examine how law enforcement interacts with all citizens, especially those in our minority community. I recently was the chief Senate author of the Police Accountability Bill. The number 2 issue is the looming budget deficit. We're facing $5.6 billion of shortfall this coming year. And the question is are we going to go down the same old path of raising taxes to cure that problem, or should we resolve our issues, take this opportunity, not the crisis, but make it into a solution without raising taxes? We've done it before.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Raines.
Thank you. Number 1, we need to reinvest in education, specifically fully funding our public schools. It's great that the legislature was able to get a 2% funding increase last year, but the reality is that 2% barely keeps pace with inflation, and our schools have seen cuts for years. In fact, we're still seeing program cuts and local funding referendums. With the lack of state and federal funding, the bulk of the burden falls on the taxpayers and homeowners in our district, and that is where we start seeing the disparities between the districts, who can afford it and who cannot. And number 2, I don't think any reasonable person can look at the state of healthcare in Minnesota and conclude that it's that it's working or sustainable. People aren't seeking preventative care. They're rationing their prescription medication, and they're losing their homes due to insurmountable medical debt. It's not working for farmers or small businesses either. So we need to be honest and start thinking about what the future of healthcare in Minnesota looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Robbins.
Thank you. If I'm reelected, my top 2 priorities will be rebuilding the economy after the COVID-related shutdowns and helping students who have fallen behind due to distance learning. Small businesses and workers in Minnesota have really been decimated with the COVID crisis. 900,000 Minnesotans have filed for unemployment since May. That is 28% of our workforce. We have a lot to do to help rebuild the economy with incentives, with retraining workers whose jobs will not come back, and helping businesses rebuild after the shutdown. We also have to help our youngest learners in particular, who, because of distance learning, will be falling further behind. It's no fault of the teachers, the parents, everyone is trying their best, and I know this is just a hard situation, but without being in school for phonics and math, we really need to get those students caught up, and I have a bill about early literacy for grades K through 3 that would really make a difference. We also need to give schools more funding flexibility so they can move the money where they need it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Trosson?
The top priorities that I have heard when speaking with people throughout our district, and that is where my priorities will lie, is what the district is looking for, are public safety. I hear it at every door almost that they are concerned that they do not want their police defunded. They want to make sure that police officers are supported, but they also are very concerned and they want to make sure that everybody is treated well. And in that becomes a very important topic. And how do we get there? There's a lot of amazing new trainings that can be given to police officers from virtual reality to help them understand and experience stressful situations before they're actually in one. And my second priority is children and seniors. Seniors and children have been affected greatly by COVID, and it's really important that we make sure that they are protected and supported.
Thank you. And Ms. Westland.
Thank you. You know, we've faced so many challenges in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, and we require serious leaders who are going to focus on solutions that will work for all Minnesotans. The number one issue I'm hearing during my calls with voters is that our healthcare system is top of mind. Having experienced our broken healthcare system personally, I am focused on trying to find ways to provide affordable access to healthcare for all Minnesotans, as well as addressing the cost of prescription drugs that are just skyrocketing. So many people are put in a position where they are rationing their healthcare or rationing their drugs, and that's just simply unacceptable. I will work to fully fund our schools who are stretched to their very limits at this point, and we need to do something serious to address the opportunity gap. And then finally, I will do something about gun violence. My best friend died by suicide in 1991. He was someone who should never have had access to a gun. The first bill that I will put my name on will be the expanded background check, and the second bill will be the extreme risk protection order bill.
Thank you. And our next, Ms. Bonner, sorry.
Thank you. My priorities are always about putting people first and creating government that works for real families and seniors. My first priority is really around healthcare and prescription drugs, which is an essential part of the mix. That means access to affordable healthcare that provides protections for pre-existing conditions, prioritizes preventative care with better patient outcomes, eases the burden of barriers to care, and reduces the cost of prescription drugs. My goal is to put patients back in the driver's seat and money back in their pockets. My second priority is issues that have to do with direct impact on women and children, including access to early childhood education, the environment that impacts health outcomes for families, women's equality and pay equity, and public safety so our officers and our community members arrive home safely. My goal is to care for our families and to provide a brighter future for the next generation.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Rains. Do you feel the state has managed the COVID-19 pandemic well? Why or why not? And what would you do different, or what would you do more, or what more should the state do?
COVID-19 is the third leading cause of death in the United States. Let me repeat that. COVID-19 is the third leading cause of death in the United States. This pandemic has swept across the country like wildfire. In partnership with the Minnesota Department of Health, Governor Walz has taken swift action implementing science-driven safety measures that have protected all Minnesotans. As a result, we have fared better than other parts of the country. We are clearly doing things right here in Minnesota, and I'm proud to support efforts like the mask mandate that is helping stop the spread of the virus in public spaces. No one wants to make that decision to keep kids home from schools or to issue mandates. But the reality is, slowing the spread of the virus is how we protect our families, teachers, nurses, and other frontline workers, as well as our small businesses. It's how we reopen our economy for long-term success.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. I supported the governor's initial decision to close down for a few weeks to see if we could flatten the curve and keep our healthcare system from being overrun. I voted in support of the state spending $500 million to provide PPE, testing, and other necessary expenses for our healthcare system and for small businesses. I also led the fight for a $60 million grant program for small businesses using federal CARES dollars, and I voted in favor of bills that cut red tape so we could better use telemedicine, extend licensures, and also allow restaurants and bars to give takeout wine and beer so they'd have some revenue coming in during the shutdown. What I feel we didn't do well is that the governor relied on statewide mandates all the way through until we got to the school reopening, which I'm very grateful that was a local control decision. But as you look at the data, county by county, it impacted the whole state very differently. So I think the best use of the data is to do local decisions based on local data, and we need to focus still at this moment on long-term care facilities. We didn't do a good job focusing on that early enough, and we still have much more testing to do, and we need to prioritize long-term care facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
With the COVID-19 coming kind of out of nowhere for most of us, it has really impacted the people of Minnesota and really our whole country and really the world. What I have seen firsthand is I've been able to do distance learning with kids and different things. And I think the important part is, I think in the beginning, our data is changing. We had very little bit of information in the beginning, and as we've gone through this, we've learned a lot more. And I think as we get more information, it is important that we make individualized decisions in different areas so that we reduce the negative impact on businesses, on people, on families. Because when you get to talk to people on the phone and you find out that they didn't get to be with their wife of 45 years when she passed away, it's those moments that we really have to look back at what we're doing and make sure we're making the right decision, that we're not impacting somebody's life negatively long term.
Thank you. Ms. Westland?
So as of today, over 93,000 Minnesotans have tested positive for COVID-19. Over 7,000 of those people have been hospitalized, and we have had nearly 2,000 Minnesotans die from this virus. All 50 states, the federal government, still recognize that COVID-19 is a critical emergency. There is some form of a declaration of emergency in every single state. This crisis is not over. Governor Walz, with input from experts, epidemiologists, the Department of Health, Department of Education, has done the best job that he can in a situation where there's no playbook, there's been no prior situation like this to be able to figure out what to do. He has done an excellent job. We have given local control to our school districts, and they are doing the very best that they can to keep people safe. But we also need leaders who will not send conflicting messages to Minnesotans. You need to mask up, we need to get through this crisis together, and we need people who are unifying Minnesotans in this state.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. We've seen this pandemic play out across the world. Here at home, 76% of Minnesotans believe that we've done a good job. The number and severity of cases remains steady or is reducing. Our swift ramp up of testing with local partners led the nation and slowed the spread, and we're seeing the positive results play out. Businesses have reopened, their resilience and innovation has shown through, and the challenging task of recovery has begun. We avoided a second shutdown, which would be disastrous for small businesses at a time when we need them to survive and thrive for vibrant communities. Our state recovery rate is in the top tier in the nation. Our local economy is faring better than that of our neighbors. Unemployment rates are below the national average. Jobs are opening, helping families put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. Minnesotans understand that working together, helping their neighbors, is the swiftest way to beat this pandemic.
Thank you. And Mr. Lemmer?
Thank you. Well, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, and I'll have to admit that. But at the same time, if we ever ran into this again, I think we have to ask ourselves some questions about what we've seen already. In the beginning, the legislature unanimously supported flattening the curve, spending up to $500 million in funds that came out of our surplus, and therefore not having it for other needs in the future. However, the questions we should ask is, should we have been led to believe in Minnesota that 74,000 people were going to immediately die due to COVID? Were the modeling scenarios appropriate? Did the governor need to spend $7 million on a morgue building that hasn't had one single person in it? Should every single county and community need to be treated the same, such as metropolitan areas versus rural? It's the same standard, and quite honestly, I think that's the biggest rub for Minnesotans. They're all treated the same, and they don't have the same symptoms or the results. Let's isolate and protect our vulnerable citizens while being cautious and hopeful that this ends soon.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with Ms. Robbins. What additional actions should the legislature take to address concerns about policing and racial justice?
Thank you. I supported the police reform bill that we did in the legislature this summer. It was bipartisan, and it really addressed some important issues, banning the use of the chokehold, requiring a duty to intervene if an officer sees misconduct, and making some changes on arbitration reform. I'm a strong supporter of our local law enforcement. I've known and worked with them over the last 2 years, and they serve very bravely in very difficult conditions. And any one of them will tell you that the person who most doesn't like a bad cop is a good cop. So that being said, when I've talked with our local law enforcement, the number one thing they tell me we still need to do is fix arbitration reform. Members of the police who are accused of misconduct deserve every due process right, but the way the arbitration system works is that if a police chief fires someone, the arbitrator can reinstate them over the police chief's decision-making, and that is not working. We need to go to a different model of arbitration or use the administrative law judge, which is my preference. So I hope we can work on that next session.
Thank you. And Ms. Trosson?
With everything that's happening in the, I was excited to see that there's some work that was done over the summer with legislation in regards to different things with the police department. And I think from my own personal experience growing up in Maple Grove and the Osseo area is I've had such a positive experience with our police department. They were there for my family and many times when we needed them in crisis. So I think it's really important that we support them. I support them, but I always believe that training is essential. And I do believe that we do need to work a little bit more on legislation to help protect the people.
Thank you. And Ms. Westline?
So I think any discussion tonight about policing and racial justice should recognize the moment that we are in, and I would like to take a moment to remember Breonna Taylor. We are seeing communities in pain who are asking us to do something to transform our criminal justice system and our police system so that every single person feels served by that system. I have such an enormous amount of respect for the people of color and Indigenous caucus members, the Posse caucus members, who have been tirelessly leading on the issue of public safety and criminal justice reform for so long. And it was great that some of their proposals were passed in the third special session, but there is more work to be done. I look forward to working not only with the Posse caucus members, but with people of color, Black people, Indigenous people who live in our community to make sure that our policing and our public safety serves everyone. And we want to make sure that everyone feels that this process, this system, is just and fair and equitable. And we want everyone to go home safe at night. I send my prayers to the 2 officers who died or who were shot last night in Louisville.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
The passage of the Police Accountability and Reform Act was a good first step. Many of the reforms shared broad support from community groups, police chiefs, and officers who live and work in our community. Future changes that I would like to see are around reforms around the treatment of victims of sexual assault, the processing of rape kits to get repeat offenders off the streets, reforms that crack down on sex trafficking, which takes advantage of our young women and our children. In terms of public safety, I'm the chief author of a bipartisan bill with my colleague, Senator Limmer, that would extend the North Metro Range here in Maple Grove. It is one of 3 regional facilities in the state that provide training for our officers, from the FBI to state troopers and the local police. We need to acknowledge that it is possible to both provide officers the training to feel confident in their ability to do their job as good public servants, and for residents to feel respected so that everyone goes home safely at the end of the day.
Thank you. Mr. Lemmer?
Thank you. To begin, I was the chief author of the Police Accountability Bill this year. Very proud to be a part of it, and it took a lot of work. We prohibited chokeholds, we refined training, we involved more civilians from communities of color to give advice to the police officer standard and training. But to address racial justice in the time left is almost impossible. Well, it is impossible. It's a historic issue, it's deep and wide, and it goes back centuries. Nevertheless, unlike other communities, some minority communities have a longing for a natural and a presumed sense of justice that they see in other areas of our state, and they feel it's missing. In addition, what I've learned is that they want to be respectfully heard, and quite honestly, I don't think that always happens. So I think dialogue, discussion, really working hard to listen to members in the minority community in our state is vital to make the next steps forward. And the Police Accountability Bill is a first step.
Thank you, Mr. Raines.
Honestly, the defund language is deliberately inflammatory, and it's not the message that's right for Minnesota or our district. We value public safety here. That doesn't mean there isn't work that we can do to ensure that everyone in our community feels welcome and secure. Oftentimes, we demand too much of our law enforcement officers. We ask them to be social workers, drug and alcohol counselors, and referees. We ask them to go to the worst day of our lives time and time again. We need to invest in them and in our community. They should be in training 20% of their time, with the majority of it in de-escalation training. We need to prioritize hiring officers who live in the district and have relationships with those that they are tasked with protecting. The smart path isn't to just arbitrarily remove funding from our police, but to make investments in partnering with those crisis resources and preventative resources that can reduce the number of incidents that our police get called on in the first place. We as a community have an opportunity to reimagine more than just an inclusive way to keep our district safe.
Thank you. And our next question, we'll start with Ms. Trosson. Do you support a reduction in taxes for residents and businesses? Why or why not? If so, which taxes do you want to see reduced?
When speaking with people, it is clear that people would like to see reduced taxes. I agree. We are walking into quite the deficit at the state level here. So in regards to what we can do, it's about reducing waste, wasteful spending, and fraud. So it's important that we do whatever we can to make things be able to run a little bit leaner, but yet be able to meet the needs of all of the people in our community. It's going to be really a struggle as we look at the different areas in legislature. It's going to be a really big undertaking, really, to really be able to balance the budget, which we have to do in the state of Minnesota. So it's going to be taking a lot of account of different parts of what we need to look at, how much we spend where, and see if there's anything that we can do to keep taxes low.
Thank you. Ms. Westland?
You know, because of the foresight of Democrats in 2014, we actually have a rainy day fund, and law requires 1/3 of budget surpluses to go into this reserve fund. And while that has helped somewhat, that certainly is not the solution to the structural budgetary problems that we have, not only in the current biennium, but in the one to come. Here's the thing, we cannot cut our way out of this deficit. There is not enough efficiency in the budget that we can find that will cover the deficit. Governor Walz has said, and I would agree, we also cannot tax our way out of this, and we certainly should not be imposing greater burdens on working families and those who are experiencing poverty in their lives. There are things that we can do to roll back some of the tax cuts that were provided in 2017. $300 million went to 800 millionaires in Minnesota in tax cuts. That's one place we can look. We could also look at bringing back the inflationary measure on property tax levies. A tax cut was given to corporate property tax owners, corporate building owners. That's a lot to say. And based on Department of Revenue statistics, about half of those are not residents of Minnesota. So we should look at where we might roll back tax cuts that were given to people who probably shouldn't have had them.
Thank you. And Ms. Bonner?
In short, yes. During the last cycle, I was delighted that we were able to provide tax relief for middle-class families who needed it the most. I'm personally focused on 2 areas that would provide my community with greater equity in taxes. First, I authored a bill on property tax relief that expands the number of individuals eligible for refunds, providing greater relief for those on the bottom end of the spectrum, our seniors on fixed income, allowing them to age in place, and our hardworking families struggling to make ends meet, to thrive, not just survive. I also support a reduction in charitable gaming taxes, allowing organizations like the VFW and Lions to keep more of their revenue and funnel that back into our communities in the form of contributions to our local fire departments, reinvest in our kids through play equipment or similar projects. That said, we know the current budget situation will require us to be good stewards of the people's money and carefully prioritize our investments going forward to make smart decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Well, the solution really has to recognize 2 steps. The first step is we're looking at a $5 to $6 billion deficit next year. That's incredible, and it will affect every item in our spending in the state of Minnesota. Some people think that we should maintain that spending and keep taxing higher. I don't think that's a wise path, and that for the long term, though, I think we should start introducing phase-in and reduction in certain taxes. It really is about jobs. It's really about, and jobs are really about a family's financial security. We need to have that security for families. That security should not come from government programs. It should come from a good job. Do we always have to tax production? Perhaps consumption might be a better way to approach it. But the bottom line, I believe, is a phase down, and so that we can be more competitive with other states, and those businesses that are located here can actually compete on the market, not only in the United States, but on the world market, and produce things that will actually get bought and be competitive with the rest of the world, furthering our economy and our financial security.
Thank you. And Mr. Raines?
The reality is that the tax burden on the middle class is too high, and we need some relief. The cost of health care keeps going up, taxes keep going up, and paychecks get stretched thinner than ever. Things like endless school reforms and increased property taxes are the direct result of underfunding education at the state and federal level. Dedicated funding assures that the onus isn't consistently placed on local governments, school districts, and the taxpayers. Favoring large corporations with tax breaks means that those tax cuts end up on people's dinner table and come out of our paychecks to make up for it. We need to stop the corporate handouts and actually invest in our small businesses, public schools. It's long past time for working families to stop shouldering the bulk of taxes in this country.
Thank you. And Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. Recognizing the reality of the coming and current budget deficit, I understand that we won't be able to make as many tax cuts as we otherwise would have wanted to look at when we had a $1.5 billion surplus like we did just 6 months ago. But I do support reducing taxation. Right now, Minnesota has the 6th highest overall tax rate in the country, and we have the 5th highest rate of individual income taxes in the country. And this is important not only for families who are paying that individual income tax, but also for small businesses. 90% 40% of our small businesses pay their taxes at the individual income rate as a pass-through. So this is really hurting our small businesses who have already been decimated by the shutdown. They cannot afford another tax increase, and neither can families who've been unemployed. And neither can our seniors. We are one of 13 states that still taxes Social Security benefits. And I have a bill that would eliminate the tax on Social Security. We made a little bit of progress on that last time in 2019, but we have more work to do to help our seniors on fixed incomes.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Ms. Westland. How would you improve the business climate in the state? How will you work to retain business in the state?
Thank you. Well, we have two parts to this question, really, because, again, we are in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic crisis that has very seriously impacted small business owners such as myself, who are just really trying to survive in the current climate. We should be focusing on, in this next legislative session, what we can do to create economic development. We need to be partnering with the federal government to make sure that funds are coming into our state to our small business owners in the form of additional low-interest loans or loans that can be subject to forgiveness. But the one thing that we can do that would certainly create some economic prosperity, or at least bring some funds into communities around the state, is to pass a bonding bill. The bonding bill did not get passed in the main session this last year. It has not been passed in the special sessions when it actually could have been taken up. And frankly, passing that would help us provide needed repairs and maintenance to our infrastructure. And as we know, what attracts businesses, among other things, are infrastructure, well-educated populations, and a great quality of life like we have in Minnesota.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner.
There are two primary areas where we need to focus. The first, I believe, in the next session, we'll need to be nimble to address the needs of our small businesses on Main Street, ensuring we have the necessary tools for them to get back on their feet. That's going to involve a lot of listening and taking decisive action. I look forward to working with our local small businesses to make that a reality. Second, in terms of retention, there's a reason Minnesota is always at the top of those lists for best places to live and work, and why we enjoy such a high quality of life. Keeping Minnesota competitive will require critical investments in things like healthcare, great schools, STEM education, especially for girls, to keep pace with technology jobs we struggle to fill. Job training for the trades to ensure skilled labor and good benefits, affordable housing, clean air and water, and great infrastructure that supports getting to work and our kids to soccer practice, as well as transportation of goods across our corridors of commerce.
Thank you. Mr. Lemmer?
Well, despite the fact that Minnesota has a diverse economy, we are going to have problems. And the problems is we're, as has been mentioned before, we're one of the highest tax states in the country. And it puts an undue burden on business owners when they have to compete with products and services that they have to offer on the market. There's actually other states that don't even impose an income tax on their citizens, let alone corporations. There's 9 states that do that. We're known for our good education and our high taxes. High taxes and overreaching regulations kill production, and they kill profit. And I don't know about anyone else. I'm a businessman, and I run my business to make money. And I think that's a good thing, as long as it's done morally. What I believe we need to do is really focus on competition. And we are not in a competitive field. We have a brain drain with our young college kids moving to high-tech states to get those jobs. We have people that are moving out. We even have seniors moving out because we still tax Social Security income. And we also need workforce development that's been mentioned tonight as well. All of those things to address would improve our economy tremendously.
Thank you. Mr. Raines?
Minnesota has long had the reputation of having one of the most dedicated and skilled workforces in the country. Businesses choose to move here for our quality of life, our work ethic, and our educated workforce. Maintaining that standard of education is our path to continued and sustained success. That includes K through 12, college, vocational, and trades apprenticeship programs. Like I said before, we need to stop pushing out our small neighborhood businesses and our family farms with ridiculous tax policies and turning a blind eye to a sub-livable wage. Every family-run business is someone's dream. And those large companies that do so well here in Minnesota need to do their part and invest back in the communities that have made them so successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. The number one thing we need to do in the short run to improve the business climate is to ensure that our employers, employees, and their clients and their business property are safe. There has been a very difficult period that we've been in with the riots and the looting, and that has made for a very difficult business climate. I have talked with many people at the doors who either work downtown or who live in our district but own businesses in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they cannot get clients to come to meetings or their employees to go back to work. So that's the first thing we need to do in the short run. We cannot defund the police. When I was touring down in Minneapolis and St. Paul after the riots, the business owners down there and the people who live in the neighborhood want more police. They want more safety and security, not less. So we have to address that in the short run. In the long run, as I've already talked about, taxes are a big deal. We also have to provide incentives for innovation. The R&D tax credit, the angel investor tax credit, and we also have to provide the Section 179 tax credit, which gives you the right to depreciate your investment when you make it, which would drive huge innovation in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Trosset?
As a small business owner and my husband is a small business owner, when COVID came and we were both deemed unessential, we went for 3 weeks before my husband could work. We had no idea how we were going to have an income. I actually went out and got another job. It is essential that we support our small businesses, but also support bigger businesses that come to Minnesota, like the med tech industry. These industries are at the forefront of many different things in regards to technology, which help the people of Minnesota and across this country and really across the world. And so it's essential that we find ways to support our businesses in our state so that we don't lose them to other states like South Dakota, where we're seeing commercials now of them saying, come here, bring your business here. So we want to make sure that we have a great place to have business here, because that means that we'll have many options for jobs, and that just means more security for people.
Thank you. And now we're going to switch over to the 30-second questions that we've received from our audience, and we'll be starting with Ms. Bonner. This question is, today's political environment is very charged and tense. How do you plan on achieving your objectives and moving the state forward in this environment? Can you provide examples of where you have compromised with people you disagree with, or where you have shown bipartisan cooperation? In 30 seconds.
That's a tall order. Well, I will say I don't really think of this as a challenge, because all 5 of the bills that I passed, particularly around prescription drugs and healthcare, had bipartisan support in the Senate, and I worked very hard to do so. I've also worked very hard to build relationships in our community with folks who are Republicans, Democrats, and independents, to really listen in and see what really matters to folks, and build those relationships so that we can find the solutions to actually get things done.
Thank you. Mr. Raines.
The solution to getting things done is working together and in the gray area. There's enough political tribalism at the Capitol, out in greater Minnesota, here, everywhere you go. The country is more divisive, it seems, than ever before. And I think what everybody needs to do is take things down a notch, have that conversation about the issues, realize that they're just a philosophical difference, and work through the gray area.
Thank you. And Ms. Trosson.
That is actually one of my major goals in running, is to make sure that everybody's voices are heard and listened to. I do think that there are great ideas on both sides of the aisle, and my goal would be to take the best ideas from both sides, bring them together, and really do something amazing for the people of Minnesota.
Thank you. Mr. Lemmer?
Well, believe it or not, we have a lot of bipartisan participation in the legislature. I think 90 to 95% of everything that we pass in a year, it's a product of bipartisan compromise. You have 5 to 10%, though, that are more spiked in emotionality or new ideas that people aren't quite familiar with. But some of the ideas that I've worked with, and I focus as the chairman of the Judiciary and Criminal Justice, Crime Prevention Committee, is in the areas of criminal law. We passed quite a package of sexual assault bills this last few years, where we had compromise in toughening up sentences. I've worked on seeking the rape kits that have been mentioned. Some communities are woefully behind in sending them for criminal analysis. We also had the recent police accountability bill, which took about a month of discussion.
Ms. Robbins.
Thank you. I have a long history of working in a bipartisan fashion. When I worked in Congress, I led the bipartisan Pork Busters Coalition. And at the Capitol, I am the co-chair of the Bipartisan Civility Caucus for the House, working bipartisanly in the House and with our counterparts in the Senate. I was able to pass the small business grant bill with strong bipartisan support in both bodies, and a bill for the Maple Grove Surgery Center also passed with strong bipartisan support. So I think that is the only way we're going to get things done, and I continue to build relationships and value time listening to people, listening especially to our constituents. A lot of the ideas I get for bills come from people who've reached out to me, so that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Westline.
Every single day, I spend my day working with families who are experiencing considerable changes. I'm a family law attorney, and it's always very emotional and very difficult. And one of the things that I have been able to do in my law practice and as a practicing mediator is to help people focus on where their common ground is and how we can arrive at solutions to what seem like impossible situations. And we're dealing with people's kids and their money. These are really difficult, challenging situations. But I spend my days helping people reach consensus, and I will do that in the legislature as well.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Mr. Limmer. We've gotten a lot of questions about COVID-19. It's a really hot topic. As a state legislature, what assistance would you seek from the federal government to help the state recover from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, the COVID-19 problem, we don't know how long it's the duration we will have to deal with. And in light of our budget deficit that's looming, I don't think we have a choice but to seek federal help. Exact ideas I'm a little weak on, but I will tell you that we do have our congressional delegation that I'll be working with, and also emphasize to our Washington delegation that there is needs, and those needs have to be promptly addressed. I've been hearing personal protective equipment is still in need in the state of Minnesota. I've heard from nurses, and I'm sure that will continue, and we will have to keep focus on that.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. I think this is as Senator Limmer alluded to, this is a really tough question because, we have no idea how long this will persist and what some of those challenges or needs will be as we go along the way. I can tell you as the daughter of a nurse and someone who works with frontline responders and EMTs and those folks every day, including here in our community, one of the continued needs that I hear over and over is around PPE and making sure that we have good access for them so that they can feel safe to do their jobs and protect everyone around us. And I think that's one of those critical pieces that we're going to need to focus on as well. And we'll need some consistency across the federal government to help us get that done.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. This is a really important topic, and I have a ton of ideas of what I think we need help from the federal government for. First of all, we need more money for our small business grant program. That money was eaten up immediately, and we need to be able to do a round 2.0. We need more money for testing supplies and vaccines. When I talk to our hospitals, they really need more supplies. We also need more money for education, for distance learning, for technology, broadband for our rural areas, and that doesn't just mean greater Minnesota. There are areas in Rogers, in Hassan, that don't have broadband access, and we need that hotspot money for our young learners. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Raines?
I think what we need most right now from the federal government is consistency in messaging. Obviously, masks and personal protective equipment is essential, and Minnesotans are starting to follow that mandate. When I travel around greater Minnesota, the last few months I see more and more people following the governor's recommendations. Our small businesses definitely need some assistance. Our homeowners, the looming eviction crisis, all of those things we need some support and leadership from the federal level on.
Thank you. Ms. Westland?
So the problem with some of the assistance that has come from the federal government, the first wave of PPP loans were actually largely taken up by companies who should not have qualified for them but for a loophole. And so there were a number of big companies that got millions of dollars that did not go to small businesses. So we absolutely need to work with our congressional delegation to make sure that any assistance that comes forward in the future has very tight restrictions on who can qualify so that it actually goes to small businesses. When small businesses function, they are the drivers of our economy, they are the drivers of our community, and we should be working with our congressional delegation to make sure that we get the assistance we need for our business community.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
This is a great question. COVID has definitely taken down a lot of us in regards to financial needs, so federal assistance would be necessary. PPEs, of course. We're talking about support for the education, definitely for broadband. I know as a distance learning person that it doesn't always work, and it's hard when kids can't get their education. Definitely for small business loans. I have a lot of people that I know that are really suffering with their small businesses, and also assistance for mortgages and different things like that when people aren't able to work and haven't been able or lost their jobs.
Thank you. Another topic of concern for a lot of people right now is the upcoming elections. And we will start with Ms. Robbins. Are you committed to ensuring that all ballots legally cast for the November 3rd election be counted, even if the count is not completed on November 3rd?
Yes. First of all, let me say absolutely. And there's been some discussion of not a peaceful transition of power, and I completely reject that. There will be a peaceful transition of power, and we all look forward to that. That's one of the many things that makes America exceptional. In terms of counting every ballot, there's been a state court decision here that says that the state of Minnesota has 7 days beyond November 3rd in which to count the ballots. So I don't expect decisions to be made on November 3rd here. We have until November 10th to finalize the election counting.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer.
The question or the answer would simply be yes. All ballots should be counted.
Thank you. Ms. Westland.
Brevity is always good, and it's always hard for lawyers. I'll admit that up front, but I agree with Mr. Limmer that every single legally cast ballot should be counted.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson.
I believe every legal ballot that's been casted should be counted.
Mr. Raines.
I agree with everyone else so far. Yes, every legal ballot should be counted. And in this country, that's why men and women put the flag on their shoulders and serve their country, is for the right to vote.
Thank you. And Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. You know, I'm the vice chair for the elections committee, so questions on our democratic process always get me very excited. Yes, absolutely. Every single vote that is legally cast should be counted. As was alluded to earlier, because of the court decision and working with the Secretary of State, we do actually have 7 days to process ballots as long as they have been postmarked by Election Day. That is the key factor in that equation. And I do believe that we have received a record number of absentee ballots this year, and so I do expect that that will help alleviate some of the pressure that our poll workers will feel in helping to get those items processed.
And now we're going to switch back to our final question, your closing statements, and we'll be back to having 1 minute to answer those. We'll start with Mr. Raines.
I'd like to thank the Chamber and the League again for having us, and to all of you taking time to participate in our democracy this evening. As your representative, my responsibility is to be a conduit for the people of our district to the Capitol. The job isn't about political tribalism or partisan politics. It's about amplifying the voices of the members of the community that I signed up to serve. The families in this district are tired of struggling to get by. When I'm elected, I will work hard to establish a fair tax structure where everyone pays their fair share. I will support all efforts to fully fund public schools so our kids get the education they deserve. I will fight to make sure that every Minnesotan has access to quality and affordable health care. Lastly, we need to stop playing party politics and pass a bonding bill that will bring good jobs to Minnesotans and income back to our communities. That's why I'm here, and I hope to earn your vote. To learn more about me and how I plan to bring real change to the members of our district, please visit our website, rainsfor34a.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. Thank you for this forum this evening. It's been an incredible privilege to serve the people of Rogers, Dayton, and Maple Grove in the House for the last 2 years. I have loved getting to know you and your families and hearing what's most important to you. Minnesotans want leaders who can work together to get things done, and I have shown I can do that, chairing the House Bipartisan Civility Caucus, passing the bills that I described, and working to help small businesses stay afloat during this pandemic. I focus on issues that strengthen families and communities and will rebuild our economy after the pandemic closures and this situation is over. With the $4.7 billion deficit, I will focus on balancing the budget by cutting spending and reducing the growth of government, which grows faster than the rate of inflation, rather than taxing families who have lost their jobs or businesses who have been closed down. I'm a strong advocate for education and reducing healthcare costs and reducing the price of prescription drugs. I work hard every day for our district to make a difference for you, and I hope you will check out my website, KristenRobbinsMN.com, and I hope to earn your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Thank you. I too want to thank the League for hosting this event. I'm Warren Limmer. I'm the Republican State Senator serving the people in Maple Grove, Osseo, Rogers, and Dayton. When I think of the role of government, I first think of the safety and the future of my family, friends, and neighbors. As a father, I want our children to be safe and have the best chance of reaching their full potential through a quality education system. As a policymaker, we must always pursue a passion for justice and keep a compassionate heart for those least among us. In order to attract more jobs, we must prioritize spending while reducing waste, overreaching regulations and taxes. And as always, I continue to demand that government be limited yet efficient and always the guardian of our civil liberties. I'm Senator Warren Limmer, running for re-election. It's been an honor to serve the people of these communities. I wish to thank you, and may God bless.
Thank you. Ms. Trosson?
I am running to listen, support, and empower the people of our community and our state I live a life of civil service, from listening to the seniors at our local nursing home to listening to the voices of the children I work with. I have been there to support, empower them and give them the opportunity at the best life. It is time to take those listening skills to empower the people of our community in stepping forward to share their voice and their stories with me so that I can bring them to the Capitol so that those stories are considered in every policy that's made down at the Capitol. As a lifetime resident of Osseo Maple Grove, I am committed to serving our community and this great state of Minnesota. I would be honored to be your next state representative in District 34B. I vote for Dory, and let's work together.
Thank you. Ms. Bonner?
Thank you. As your state representative for Maple Grove and Osseo, I am truly blessed to serve my community. I believe in putting people first, making government work for real families and seniors, using common sense for the common good. I've built a solid relationships in this community, working closely with Republicans, Democrats, and independents. I count among my greatest supporters those who say I am both real and authentic. At heart, we are blessed to live in a community of good people. I believe deeply that I serve my whole community, and I have a track record to prove it. I'm tenacious at removing barriers, reaching across the aisle, and getting things done. If it's good for my community, I'm fighting for it. I'm State Representative Kristen Bonner. It is an honor to serve you. I ask for your vote to keep moving forward together.
Thank you. And Ms. Westland?
Thank you once again to the League of Women Voters and to all of those watching at home. My name is Bonnie Westland, and I am asking for your vote. My mom raised 4 kids on her own, including my sister, who was blind and autistic. She worked hard at jobs that weren't enough to pay the bills, but she kept most of that to herself. And I know it was difficult for her, but what I learned from her was grit and determination, getting up every single day and working hard, putting one foot in front of the other. I have faced some of those similar challenges myself. I have raised 2 boys on my own. I started my own law firm literally from nothing and have had that law firm now for almost 17 years. I understand the challenges that are faced by working families in our community and around this state, because my life experiences have taught me to have empathy and concern and a strong desire to serve others. We need leaders now more than ever who are uniters and not dividers. I will work as hard for your family as I have for my own. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our questions for tonight. Once again, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to thank all the candidates tonight for agreeing to participate in the forum. I would also like to thank the voters for viewing and participating by submitting excellent questions. Also, I would really like to thank our friends at CCX Media for their continued support of the League of Women Voters and our shared mission to provide nonpartisan forums for voters to get to know the people who wish to represent them. Remember that if we could not get to your question tonight and you have any further questions for the candidates, we invite you to contact them directly with your concerns. Information about your candidates may be found on vote411.org. Please remember to get out and vote on or before November 3rd, as your vote truly does count. Thanks, and have a great evening. Stay safe.